Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our podcast. I'm Jason, your host, and as always, I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. How are you today?
Hi, Jason. I'm doing great, thank you. And hello to all our listeners. We're so glad you've joined us today. We have an exciting topic that's close to the heart of every English learner out there. Today, we'll be talking about the best strategies to learn English, especially if you're just starting or maybe want to strengthen your basics.
That's right, Sarah. Learning English can feel like a big challenge, especially when you're a beginner. It's easy to get overwhelmed or even discouraged, but we're here to make it simpler and show you that with the right strategies, anyone can learn English effectively. And you don't have to be perfect. Just making small improvements every day can take you a long way.
Absolutely. And we get it. There's a lot to cover when learning a new language. So, we'll be focusing on strategies that make the learning process both fun and manageable. Today, we'll share practical tips on how to set goals, practice daily, focus on listening and speaking, use technology to your advantage, and finally, embrace mistakes as part of the learning journey.
Exactly, Sarah. Whether it's setting small, realistic goals or using tools and apps that make learning interactive, we're covering it all. And remember, learning English isn't about being perfect from day one. It's about progress. Even small improvements can make a big difference. So we encourage you to take things one step at a time.
So, if you're someone who wants to improve your English or you're just beginning, stick around. We'll walk you through the best ways to stay motivated, keep improving, and make English a part of your daily life. By the end of this episode, you'll have some solid strategies to kickstart or refresh your English learning journey.
Yes, and for those of you who are already subscribed, thank you for being part of our community. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and check out our playlist, English Podcast Conversation for Beginners, for more helpful content like this. All right, Sarah, should we get started?
Let's do it, Jason. We're excited to share these strategies with all of you. So, let's dive right into our first strategy, setting realistic goals for your English learning journey.
All right, let's dive into our first strategy, setting realistic goals. When you're learning a new language, it's tempting to want to be fluent immediately. But setting smaller, realistic goals can actually make the process smoother and more enjoyable. Sarah, why do you think having realistic goals is so important for beginners?
That's a great question, Jason. I think it's all about motivation. When you set goals that you can achieve, even if they're small, you start feeling proud of your progress, and that feeling keeps you going. So instead of thinking, I want to be fluent, a better goal might be, I want to learn 10 new words this week, or I want to understand basic conversations. These small wins add up.
Absolutely, it's like building blocks. Small, manageable goals help you see progress, which is key to staying motivated. And once you achieve those smaller goals, you'll feel more confident to take on bigger challenges.
Exactly, Jason. And another thing that really helps is setting goals that fit your lifestyle. For example, if you're busy, maybe aim to practice English for just 10 to 15 minutes a day. That's enough to make steady progress without feeling overwhelmed. And if you miss a day, don't worry, just pick it up again the next day.
Yes, consistency is the real secret here. Learning a language doesn't have to be stressful. It's more about regular practice than long hours. So listeners, think about one small goal you can start with today. Maybe learning a few new phrases or listening to a short podcast episode.
Great advice, Jason. And remember, your goals can change over time as you improve. What's important is to start small and keep going. Step by step, you'll see yourself getting better.
That's right. So our tip here is to focus on small, realistic goals that you can achieve easily. By doing this, you'll stay motivated and feel great about your progress. Now, on to our next strategy, how to practice consistently. Now that we've talked about setting realistic goals, let's move on to our second strategy, practicing consistently. Sarah, why do you think consistent practice is so important when learning English?
Consistency really is the key, Jason. When we practice regularly, even if it's just for a few minutes each day, our brains get used to the language. It's like exercise. The more you do it, the stronger you get. So even if you're just practicing 10 to 15 minutes a day, it makes a difference.
That's a great comparison, Sarah. And the good thing is, you don't need to set aside hours. Short daily practice is more effective than long, once-a-week sessions. Little things like listening to an English song or watching a short video in English can make a big impact.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be traditional study time either. You can integrate English into your daily routine. For example, try thinking in English while you're doing something simple, like cooking or walking. Or try reading simple English posts on social media.
Good tip, Sarah. And for those who are super busy, you can set reminders on your phone to practice for a few minutes here and there. These small sessions add up, and over time, you'll notice real improvement in your understanding and speaking.
Yes, and don't be hard on yourself if you miss a day. Just start again the next day. Consistency is more about sticking with it over time, not about being perfect every single day.
Well said, Sarah. So remember, listeners, a little bit of practice each day can go a long way. Just find a way to bring English into your daily life, and soon it'll start feeling natural. All right, let's jump into our next strategy, focusing on listening and speaking first. All right, let's dive into our third strategy, focusing on listening and speaking first. This one's a game changer, especially for beginners. Sarah, why is it so helpful to start with listening and speaking?
Great question, Jason. I think it's because listening and speaking are the foundations of communication. When you focus on these skills first, you start feeling comfortable with how English sounds and how to respond. It's like learning the rhythm of the language, which helps build confidence quickly.
Absolutely, Sarah. Plus, listening to real conversations helps you pick up useful phrases and natural expressions. For example, listening to podcasts, watching videos, or even repeating after speakers can really help with pronunciation and flow.
Yes, and you don't need to understand every single word. Just listening to native speakers helps you get used to the language. For beginners, I'd recommend starting with simple content like children's stories, podcasts for beginners, or even watching your favorite shows with English subtitles.
Good tips, Sarah. And speaking doesn't have to be perfect either. Even practicing a few sentences each day is valuable. Try saying what you see around you in English or talking to yourself about your day. It's amazing how much progress you'll make just by speaking a little each day.
Exactly, Jason. And remember, don't worry if you make mistakes. The goal is to get comfortable. The more you listen and speak, the more natural English will feel.
Great advice, Sarah. So listeners, focus on building your listening and speaking skills first. It's one of the best ways to feel confident in real-life conversations. Now let's move to our next strategy, using technology and resources to support your learning. All right, let's move on to our fourth strategy, which is all about using technology and resources. There are so many tools available now that can make learning English easier and more interactive. Sarah, what are some ways beginners can use technology to help them learn?
There are so many great options, Jason. For starters, language learning apps like Duolingo, Babbel, or Memrise are really useful. These apps help you practice vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation in a fun, game-like way. Plus, they're easy to use on the go, so you can practice anytime.
That's right. And beyond apps, there are also websites and YouTube channels, like our own, that offer free lessons for English learners. Watching videos can be especially helpful because you get to hear how native speakers talk, which is great for improving both listening and speaking.
Exactly. And another tip is to use language exchange platforms like HelloTalk or Tandem. These apps connect you with people who are learning your native language so you can help each other. It's a great way to practice conversational English in a friendly, real world setting.
Great suggestion, Sarah. And for those who prefer learning on their own, podcasts and audiobooks in English are fantastic resources. You can listen while you're commuting, exercising, or even cooking. Listening to content at your level can help build vocabulary and improve your listening skills.
Yes, and don't forget about social media. Following English language accounts on Instagram or Facebook, or joining groups for English learners can be very motivating. You get exposed to new words, phrases, and even cultural references in a fun way.
Absolutely, Sarah. And listeners, remember that these tools are there to support you. Learning a language doesn't have to be a solo journey. You have a whole world of resources to help you. Now let's move to our final strategy. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. All right, let's talk about our final strategy, which might be the most important one. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. This is something a lot of learners struggle with, right, Sarah?
Yes, definitely, Jason. Many people feel nervous about making mistakes, especially when speaking. But here's the truth: mistakes are a natural part of learning. They're how we grow and improve. No one speaks perfectly when they start, and that's okay.
Absolutely, Sarah. In fact, making mistakes is a good sign. It shows that you're actually using what you've learned. And often the mistakes you make will help you remember the correct way because you'll learn from the experience.
Exactly. Plus, most people are understanding and won't judge you for making mistakes. If anything, they'll appreciate that you're trying. So, don't let the fear of mistakes hold you back from practicing speaking or trying new things in English.
Good point, Sarah. And remember, even native speakers make mistakes sometimes. Language is about communication, not perfection. So try to relax and focus on expressing yourself. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll feel. And over time, you'll make fewer mistakes.
Yes, so listeners, let go of that fear. Embrace your mistakes as stepping stones to improvement. Every time you make one, you're getting one step closer to your goal.
Well said, Sarah. So let's recap all the strategies we've discussed today to help you learn English more effectively. Subscribe to the channel, share the podcast,